Not in possessions, but in
99.3 Nigeria Info. We'll be right back.
I am the chef of life with Mr. Chef. Niger vibe, Mr. Chef, two finger crush. I am the chef of life with Mr. Chef. I am the chef of life with Mr. Chef.
Mr. Chef, taste home, taste culture.
Chef of life.
Let's be honest. This isn't the show for the faint-hearted. We don't do PR here. We do truth. We don't repeat headlines. We interrogate them.
If it's power, we question it. If it's policy, we break it down. And if it's propaganda, we cut right through it. Every story, every voice, every fact under the spotlight. Because Nigerians don't need noise, they need clarity. So if you're tired of spin and ready for sense, welcome.
I'm Mariana Cone, and this is Hard Facts.
Nigeria Info 99.3. Let's talk. With information.
99.3 Nigeria Info, your number one station for talk. Let's talk. Number one station for talk. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
From all of us here at 99.3 Nigeria Info, have a Merry Christmas.
Experience a better way to stay connected.
Listen, fellas and girls.
Download the Nigeria Info mobile app on iOS and Google Play Store. Join the conversation and stay connected. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The conversation is just...
By
JVS Owike and co. are suspended because they've been engaging in anti-party activities.
Did he not campaign for Labour Party in Lagos State?
System in Nigeria is just my pocket.
Withdrawing police details from VVIP people.
Tomorrow we'll call for the new people to come and join military. I would allow.
The news, conversation, information, and discussion. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
It's 3 o'clock.
It's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
And now the business news.
Lagos, the Federal Executive Council has approved the 2026 appropriation bill, paving the way for President Tinubu to present it to the National Assembly. The 58.47 trillion naira budget is 6% higher than 2025, with 25.68 trillion naira for capital projects and 15.52 trillion naira for debt servicing. The budget focuses on completing ongoing projects and reducing oil dependence, with non-oil revenues making up 2/3 of government income. Meanwhile, Lagos State and partners are stepping up efforts to grow Nigeria's $250 billion green economy through better waste management. At a recent forum, officials said waste can create jobs and boost the economy. Lagos aims to lead in recycling and circular economy innovations. Stakeholders pledged to focus on funding new technology and community support to build a cleaner, greener future. The World Bank is expected to approve a $500 million loan for Nigeria today. The funds are aimed at boosting finance for the country's small and medium-sized businesses. Managed by the Development Bank of Nigeria, the loan seeks to unlock nearly $2 billion in additional private investment. This move is part of efforts to support economic growth and job creation across the nation. Nigeria will let 149 companies keep their tax holidays for at least 2 more years, despite a new tax system starting in January 2026. The Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission says the incentives have attracted 8.7 trillion naira in investments and created nearly 59,000 jobs. This incentive will gradually end, replaced by a new tax credit program to boost long-term investment and growth. Meanwhile, PENCOM warns employers, including media, to pay pensions on time or face tougher penalties. PENCOM's Director General Omolola Olowararan said while engagement remains the first step, tougher actions will follow if defaults continue. PENCOM also plans new services in 2026 to help retirees, including a system for handling complaints and boosting transparency. Nigeria's Central Securities Clearing System has appointed Shehu Shantali as its new CEO, effective from the 1st of January 2026. He replaces the outgoing chief, Haruna Jallo Waziri. The company's board commended Jallo Waziri's 8-year leadership. Shantali, an industry veteran with over 2 decades of experience, says he aims to build on the firm's strong foundation in the capital market. And finally, Germany faces its biggest budget deficit since reunification. The government plans heavy spending on infrastructure and defense, pushing the deficit to 4.8% of GDP by 2028. This is well above the constitutional limit of 0.35%. Despite this, debt levels remain relatively low. The Bundesbank urges urgent action to control finances amid tax cuts and social spending that add to the growing shortfall. And that's all the business update we have for you at this time. You are listening to 99.3.
All of us here at 99.3 Nigeria Info. Have a Merry Christmas.
Join the conversation no matter where you are. Download our mobile app by searching Nigeria Info FM on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Also, get news updates in sports, entertainment, news, and current affairs right on the app. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
We hope you have a nice and warm holiday season. It's Nigeria Info, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. 99.3, let's talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
From Washington to Beijing, Moscow to Abuja, London to Kigali, the world is shifting fast. Elections are shaping destinies. Wars are redrawing borders. Economies are rising and falling. And global alliances are being tested like never before. But what does it all mean for you?
With a new administration and a new president in the White House trying to put an end to the war.
I didn't know the historical context, what the state of Israel means for them.
Join the fearless Ireti Bakare-Yusuf on Borderlines every Friday at 4 p.m. on Nigeria Info 99.3. As she dissects the biggest global events and their impact on world peace.
Those who are not familiar with Israel or the war itself would not know much about the group breaking the silence.
No spin, no propaganda, just deep insights and fearless conversations on the geopolitics shaping our world.
People who will call and start telling you about the Bible prophecy about America and everything. See, America is not in the Bible. There's some people who, yes, they share the ideology of, yes, we and these people, we are equal, but they can't speak up.
Borderlines on Nigeria Info every Friday at 4 p.m. The world is changing. Don't just watch, understand it. Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
This is The Voice Note on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
To have his entire savings account, my father was particularly lucky to have his entire savings account turned onto the principal of my secondary school, who was an expatriate. My father had a savings of £10,000. His first son, my senior brother Joseph, was studying law in the United Kingdom. He had finished his first degree in London School of Economics, where I also went to, and was doing his master's. My dad felt we were all going to be killed during the war, and he gave brother Aloysius, a Scottish man who was principal of College of Immaculate Conception, his entire passbook, and asked him to train my brother abroad with these savings, but he should not tell him that the money was his. Because of foreign exchange restrictions, Brother Aloysius could only take away £4,000 from the money. He told my brother that this was a loan from the marriage brothers to help his education. My brother rented a house bought a house in Maidavale, a flat in Maidavale in London. Those who know London know that it's a very rich area now. He and the son of the former president of Nigeria, who was his friend, Nwachukwu Azikiwe, became painters, and they painted the flat and they rent it out. And they went to East London and hired a one-bedroom studio apartment where both of them lived. That flat that my brother bought, had he not been stupid to sell it, is worth over £1 million today. But he sold it in order to finance his education. He got a master's degree, he got a PhD in law, and he came back and established in Western House and became a very prominent lawyer. But that £6,000 that was left in the money, my father discovered it 6 months after the war, when the manager of Barclays Bank then, which is now Union Bank, called him and revealed to him that he had £6,000 plus interest, which were not tampered with during the course of the war. My dad then decided to buy a Mercedes lorry bus. That time in the southeast, all the vehicles that were there had been used during the war, and many had been cannibalized, and the few that survived were smoking or hardly in any good condition to traverse state territories. There was no farming throughout the war, and a lot of people who were compressed in few communities where the war did not reach did not have enough food cultivated in those communities to sustain them. So all the food that were coming to the east were brought from the west and the north, principally from the north. And so all the transporters had made a lot of money transporting food. Daddy decided to buy a Mercedes 911 lorry. And my mother cooked a very delicious meal that evening to congratulate him. And the highest she could kill was the chicken. And she reserved the gizzard in our custom for my father and some of the precious parts. As they were clinking their glasses in the veranda, my mom was thanking my father for making this investment, because now she had 3 children who were either supposed to go to university or now due for university who couldn't go, including myself, my immediate senior who later became governor of my state, and my late sister who became a pharmacist. And my father said, we've just made money for the drivers because we have no way of knowing how much he earned and how much he will bring back to us. I was astonished to hear this. And so I said I was going to become a conductor. In the morning, I brought out my bag and I went downstairs to inspect the car and to organize the driver and the conductor. And my mom said to me, "Where are you going to?" I said, "I'm following these people." She said, "You're a foolish man. Go and drop that bag." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I say I must go because I want to make sure that me and my siblings go to school. She said, "Oh, your father wants to use his son to make money." I said, "Mama, you must go to confession to our priest." So this driver and this conductor are not people's children. So you and your husband can use them to make money, but you can't use your son. And don't forget, I was a lieutenant in the war, and I was now audacious enough to confront my mother, having been exposed to chivalry. My mother was a little constrained by the fact that I antagonized her with God. And she shook her head and said, "Okay, come, let's go to my room. I need to pray for you." We got to her room. She was confused. She didn't know what she...
You hear it from us.
We tell you who,
when,
where,
and how.
Be part of the discussion. It's Borderline.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's been one of those crazy afternoons. Welcome to Borderlines. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. It's a crazy December in Lagos. But my guest is not joining us from Lagos or Nigeria. So that's a good thing right now. Everything seems to have gone upside down right now. But we're going to get through this together. Because incidentally, it is our last show. Yes, it's the last live, the final live show before until the 6th, I think, or is it the 7th of January. So you all know what's been happening in the Congo. Quite a lot, as one would say, a heck of a lot. President Trump seems to have positioned himself as some sort of peacekeeper. He believes he has resolved the issue of several decades. But we all know the problems in the Congo, incidentally between Rwanda and Congo, is much more than just political. It also involves the greed of natural minerals, a lot of which you have in Congo, and rare earth. So, right now, my guest, who will be talking with me about this situation, is none other than Gideon Beleke. Gideon Beleke is going to be talking to me, and indeed we're going to talk about Africa overall, because Gideon is, let me just get it, like I said, everything seems to have gone wrong. Gideon is, African Coalition for Development. Gideon, did I get you right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Excellent.
And it's nice to be speaking with you today.
Excellent. Pleasure to speak with you. I am Ireti. I'm the host of Borderlines. So let's start with the big issue right now, which is Congo and the Congolese war. Let's call it Congo and Rwanda, because everybody seems to be hiding away from calling it what it is. But we all know what it is. Let's start with the United States. What exactly are they up to?
Well, the U.S. Is playing a role of mediator, but as you know, they also have interest in the Congo mineral supply chain. So they're playing a role of a mediator between the conflicts that has been going on between the DRC and Rwanda for the last 30 years in the Great Lakes region. Since the Rwandese genocide in 1994, a lot of Rwandese refugees fled into the DRC. And some of those, among those refugees, we had the so-called FDLR, which were the Hutus, who were part of the genocide in the Republic of Rwanda in 1994. And since then, Rwanda went from that situation of chaos to a situation where they were able to restructure their country, and knowing that they've been conducting, in violation of sovereignty of the DRC, military operations since then, and it has resulted in a war that has destabilized the Eastern DRC for the last 30 years, and a war that has claimed lives of more than 10 million people.
Let's go back. I'm glad you mentioned the FDLR, the Hutus. Take us back to how they were formed, given that they're made up primarily of the Hutus, indeed against the backdrop of the Rwandan genocide.
Well, what happened in Rwanda in 1994 was a political problem that resulted into an ethnic tension, knowing that the former president of Rwanda was a Hutu, known as the President Habyarimana, and he was killed in a plane crash. The killing was perpetrated by the Inkotani, which are the Tutsi, the Tutsi ethnic group in Rwanda that had a political organization that had a military branch, knowing the FPR, the Rwandese, which is a Rwandese political organization led by the current Paul Kagame. So this group of people originated from Uganda, where they were refugees, and they helped Uganda they helped Museveni to take power in Uganda. And after that, they decided to go and do the same thing in Rwanda, to put a Tutsi president in Rwanda, and they killed the president of Rwanda, who was Habyarimana. Of course, they had ethnic divisions within the country, but the assassination of the president Habyarimana by the Tutsi resulted in a mass killing within the country, and that created the Rwandese genocide.
So now here we are today. We've got one part of DRC, which is in Rwanda. Of course, we have the other part in DRC. All of that came from the Berlin Conference. And now Rwanda, which doesn't have any, or at least enough natural minerals, is now in the DRC doing what? What exactly is it that Rwanda wants?
Well, the Rwandese came into the DRC first and foremost when they supported an organization, political organization that was created by a few Congolese to overthrow the dictatorship of Mobutu Sese Seko. So they signed an agreement, and they had 9 armies between them. Namely, all the neighboring countries of the DRC contributed to troops so that they can establish a new regime in Kinshasa. And that happened in 1997. Knowing that the Rwandese forces were very present, and they were highly efficient because they were being supported by the United States of America during that time with the new regime in Kigali, and they were trying to rebuild everything. But they also had another objective: to track all the dissidents of the FDLR who flew to the DRC. And when they reached in Kinshasa, with the disagreement they started having with Mzee Laurent Desire Kabila, Mzee Laurent Desire Kabila asked all the foreign armies that helped him to capture power to leave the DRC. Most of those armies left the DRC, but the Rwandese forces refused because they wanted to eradicate the FDLR. But behind that, there was something fundamental that was happening in the region. Discovering of a strategic mineral called coltan. That was a real component during those times. You remember we had a widespread of cell phones, Nokia, and Motorola.
Yep.
All those multinational companies were getting supplied from the Eastern DRC. And Rwanda, being at the maneuver of a military operation during that time, was used as a vehicle of exploitation. And when they saw that there is an economy behind their so-called eradication of FDLR, they started conducting business behind. They saw that that was a way to get access to funds to finance their operations. That's when the war started. They refused to leave the DRC, and the regime in Kinshasa asked them to leave the DRC. They withdrew. They went in the eastern DRC, and since then, they've been conducting an aggression in that region, plus an exploitation of minerals illegally, while violating the Congolese sovereignty.
Indeed. Gideon, I'm glad you mentioned Nokia and the advent of mobile phones, especially. Why, given that the minerals are found in DRC, albeit Eastern DRC, and Rwanda is merely just, how should I say, for want of a description, an interloper into DRC matters. Is this a reflection, or is it a reflection of the weakness of a DRC leadership that these technology agents, organizations didn't bother to do a deal with DRC, but instead did a deal with Rwanda, knowing full well that it wasn't legal, because they could easily have gone into partnership with the DRC and it would have been perfectly legal, right? Every country has the right to do what they want to do and sell the minerals to whoever they want to sell it to. But Rwanda is not part of the sovereign of DRC. So they chose Rwanda. How does that reflect on the leadership of the DRC?
Well, since the fall of the regime of Mobutu, the DRC has been going under political turmoil. The country was almost divided under 4 portions, and then we went to a reunification of the country. So you understand that a country that is politically unstable and that has a lot of security issues, that is facing a lot of internal problems and divergences. It's not an easy country to do business with. So there have been a lot of political and governance issue in the DRC. That is something great and something that still has to be tackled today. But that's nevertheless, I don't think that is an alibi for an external or external entities to harm and conduct massive atrocities in a region that is even vast than Rwanda and Uganda combined. Because when we talk about the DRC, it's not a small country. This is the second largest country in Africa. So it's big. And securing
land mass, especially.
DRC,
yes.
In terms of land masses, securing a country like the DRC requires a lot of resources, a lot of organization, and highly efficient leadership. We have 9 neighbors. We are the only African countries with almost 9 neighbors. And that's puts us in a serious situation. So knowing all these parameters and the failure in leadership in the DRC, this has allowed militias and external entities to exploit on those divisions and those problems we have in the DRC so that they can monetize them and use them as an avenue to loot the DRC and to continue plundering our mineral resources while sponsoring the divergence and the divisions we've been having in the DRC.
So let's come back to today. We did it. We've given the background on how we got here right now and who the players are and what they're contributing to the atrocities. Some would argue, some even now call it a genocide, but we'll park that aside. So Donald Trump has done this so-called peace agreement. There is a gap because the militias, the M23s, were not part of this agreement. They were not included in the discussions. So what impact could that have on the success of this so-called, and I keep having to put it in inverted commas, peace agreement that Donald Trump seems to, claims to have initiated and indeed concluded?
Well, the peace agreements between the Rwanda and DRC, there's nothing magical in that document. If you go through the document, you come to a realization that it's a combination of all the past processes, peace processes and peace mechanisms that were initiated in the past since 2008. So they combine,
which was done by South Africa, I believe. South Africa has been
South Africa, Angola. We had negotiation in Nairobi, Tanzania, Arusha. We had negotiation at the EAC level. We had negotiation at the SADC level. We had negotiation at the African Union. We have actually an agreement at the Addis Ababa Accord, and then the Angola Accord, the Nairobi process, And then when we even had a mission of intervention, you remember the EAC deployed forces in the DRC, the SADC deployed forces, but those forces weren't able to maintain peace and stability and to be able to impose peace in that region. They end up withdrawing. So you understand the Washington Accord is a summary of all that, with one thing additionally is the enforcing mechanism. The Washington Accord brings something at the table that puts the parties to be responsible of their engagement. That's the only thing new in the Washington Accord. That was facilitated by Trump, of course.
Right. So going back to that, when we call it the Washington Accord, which is what Donald Trump prefers to call it, it sounds almost, how should I say, peaceful, for want of a description. Like there's nothing under this. We're just good people trying to make everybody happy. But here, the Washington, when we hear Washington in Africa, when you hear the United States, you start to think of economic powers.
Yeah.
What does the Washington Accord say with regards to the unethical actions, non-altruistic intentions of America as a nation, and indeed Donald J. Trump, the man who is currently the president of, he couldn't even pronounce Tshisekedi for a start. And so tell us.
Well, when we look at the Washington Accord, we have to understand that it's first and foremost there is a personal intention of President Trump to be the peacemaker. Yeah, to be the peacemaker, but then that fact itself put the actor in a situation where they are pressuring stuff without really tackling the root causes of the conflict that the region is experiencing. And when we try to analyze deeply what is provided within the accord itself, it's just a summary of everything that has happened in the past, every maneuver that has been initiated in the past, every negotiation that has been initiated in the past and stuff. And as you said, the war continued to be rampant on the ground. So there is really a clear distinction between what was signed and what is happening physically on the ground, because immediately after the signing of the accord, the M23 took another major city, the DRC, the city of Uvira, which shows that there's actually a difference between the text and its manifestation on the ground. But nevertheless, for the first time, we've brought all the multilateral partners together so that we can try to tackle this problem for once and for all. So for Congolese people, it's something that brings hope, but it has to materialize on the ground, and that's what people are waiting for.
Indeed, when we talk about hope, when we talk about business, I remember something. When this deal was first hatched, signed, whatever it is that Donald Trump felt he did on June the 27th, I remember saying to people, and incidentally, both Congolese people and Nigerians and some Ghanaians, Africans, that why do you think this is a good deal? Why do you think this deal is important? Although the likes of Kambele, who was was an excellent analyst, had said, no, this is not a good deal. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, I had said, why? And they all pointed to the capitalism of it, to the fact that, look, in country, Rwandan capitalist elites and business people were celebrating this deal because they're like, when there's no war, business comes in.
Yeah.
Should that matter?
Yeah, of course, because at a certain point, I myself, I'm from the Eastern DRC. I grew up in that region, and what I've experienced all my life in the Eastern DRC is barely war, like war all over. and desperation. Internally displaced people, they're destroying lives, livelihood. And when you look at the region itself, it's a region that has tremendous potential. So at a certain time, people have to think beyond the conflict and start reasoning on a way to bring the conflict to end, so that people can at least have a good life and better their living conditions, and use the potential God has given to the region to empower the economic engine of the region.
But is that going to happen, though? Because it's mainly the poor people who are affected in this war, let's be honest, right? Exactly. The people who are being killed are the people in the far away in the hinterlands on the borders, right? How is that wealth, so-called good for business, going to change the lives of those people? If the peace is only on paper?
Yeah, that's why I say there is a clear distinction between what is signed on paper and what we are experiencing on the ground. That's why there is a need of a goodwill from all the parties. To engage on a really de-escalation, to engage on a really constructive debate, to engage on a real economic reforms, so that the people who live in the DRC could have peace, so that they can have access to these resources, so that they can start benefiting from these minerals. Because if you ask these people what does the coltan look like, they don't know. But multinationals know what coltan look like. And what are the people receiving? They receive war as a result of people who are financing these militias and everything. Like what the M23 is committing in the region. Massive violation of human rights, massive displacement of civilians. These civilians have nothing to do with business. They have nothing to do with minerals. They are just considered as collateral victims. And that is unjust and immoral.
Indeed. Now, back to the more recent, not so much a signature, I don't know, celebration, whatever you want to call it, the one that happened where we saw President Tshisekedi and President Kagame, both at the White House, signing. Tell me what you made of that scene, because here's what we saw. We saw President Tshisekedi, who didn't even open this so-called, the sort of the cover where they have the signature in. He didn't look very happy, whereas Kagame looked, quite happy with what the deal that had been signed. And of course, the comedy of it all was the fact that President Trump couldn't pronounce the name of either one of the leaders. I mean, it's really quite shocking. So I have two questions there, but I'll ask the first one first. What do you think? What should we make of that? Because what is in Tshisekedi's head? Why wasn't he happy?
The President Tshisekedi wasn't happy because he knows who he's dealing with. He knows Kagame pretty well. He knows who's been supporting him. And when you look at the peace deal, which is has in its annex what we call the economic cooperation in the region, the Rwandese will be beneficial of that. But there's a precondition for them to be beneficiary of any form of economic collaboration within the region is to respect the Congolese sovereignty, to withdraw their troops from our territory and everything. Knowing that Kagame usually plays with the ethnic tensions in the region, because we have a region that, as you said earlier, the Berlin Conference, where you have some ethnic groups that share the same cultures, but that live on the two sides of the borders. When you have such kind of a scenario, it's easier for Kagame to continue his manipulation. But knowing that the President Tshisekedi, he wasn't really happy about that, because he wants to give peace to his people. He's the president. He's the president of the DRC, and he said that if he doesn't restore peace in the DRC, he will consider his mandate as a failure. He will consider himself as a failed president. And knowing that, he knows how Kagame doesn't respect any form of engagement when it comes to peace resolution, because Kagame didn't show up in Angola. This issue could have been resolved at the African Union level. It could have been resolved at the SADC level. It could have been resolved at the EAC level. But what made it almost impossible for even SADC after deploying the forces, South Africa after deploying the forces in the DRC, EAC after deploying the forces in the DRC, what made it impossible for them to resolve the issue is because there are people who don't have good intention. They've created an economy of looting in the region and manipulation, instrumentalization, and they consider it as an economic maneuver at the expense of human's life.
Indeed. So here we are. Paul Kagame, like you rightly said, the first attempt for peace, the second attempt, Angola, SADC, and all the others, which are all African initiatives. They are all, continent, intracontinent initiatives. Every single one was sponsored by an African leader. But Paul Kagame ignored them. And now he was smiling quite broadly when he got to Washington. What does this say about Africa, especially from the point of view of an ACD, which is the coalition where you're general secretary of? What does it say when a man like an external player like a Donald J. Trump can dare to hold his head up and claim, or at least be given, kudos for initiating a peace agreement in Africa, one of the longest wars in Africa that has killed millions and left millions homeless, etc. What does this say about Africa, especially Africa going forward, especially the Africa that's trying to free itself of the Berlin Conference, the Africa that's trying to unshackle itself from external influences? What does it say? A President Trump that actually has said pretty much 9 out of 10 times, he's reminded us this week that he doesn't care for Africa.
Well, it says a lot about the lack of self-esteem and the self-respect we have in Africa. Because, as I said, African leaders got no respect for the African Union. And that's a matter of fact. They got no respect for other heads of state in Africa. So they got respect for the United States because at least they have power and maneuver and money to control them. And someone like Kagame, who was the president of the African Union, who used to claim Pan-African ideas, seeing him boycotting an important meeting in Angola, and then showing up in Qatar because Qataris are funding him, that says a lot about the so-called Pan-Africanism we have in the minds of our leaders across the continent. So this should be a key lesson for us as African Coalition for Development. We see it as a lack of self-esteem and indeed a wrong posture during these times where Africa has to reshape itself. Africa has to liberate itself from this cycle of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and everything, and external influence. If we don't have self-esteem in ourselves, if we don't tend to resolve our internal issues by ourselves, if we don't respect we don't respect our countries,
sovereignty,
individual countries within the continent, if we don't respect our sovereignty, if we don't have respect for other heads of state within the continent, and when Washington calls, we rush to Washington like babies. When shall we be able to achieve the Pan-African ideals?
Indeed.
It will continue to be a utopia. So some of these leaders claim stuff that they don't embody.
As you mentioned the morals, let's talk about humanitarian. Let's talk about what is this deal? What does it say, if anything at all, about the humanitarian condition, the crisis, which is actually even arguably greater than the mineral greed? What does it say about that? About anything, if it says anything at all, about the humanitarian crisis?
Well, the first thing about the humanitarian aspect is the cessation of hostility. We need to have a complete ceasefire so that the people, the internally displaced, could be able to return to their homes. And once returned to their homes, now we will have another appropriate mechanism for transitional justice, reparation, and as we move forward. But the first condition is to cease with hostility. People need peace. And these people are suffering for nothing, for completely nothing. If you ask the M22, what are they fighting for? They are fighting for nothing. And the reason is that they took the city of Uvira. After a phone call from Washington, they started to withdraw from Uvira 2 days ago when Washington pressured Kigali. You understand that some countries in Africa, they are just being used as proxy countries. Just like Rwanda is using M23 as a proxy in the DRC, Rwanda also is being used as a proxy by some external forces, just because they hold economic hands on them, just because they arm them, just because they train their forces, they equip them and everything. So it's important to have a new type of Pan-Africanism. We need to embody a new style of Pan-Africanism, because the type of leadership we have, especially at the highest level currently in most countries across Africa, is not sufficient, and it's not. It does not reflect the greater ambitions and the responsibility Africa should have as it's carrying itself towards its path of development.
Indeed, we talk a lot about America when we talk about what's going on in Congo, but indeed, there's also the EU factor and some Arab countries. But we shall park that for now. Since we're talking Africa, and of course, giving ACD's objective and passion, could you give us some words as to what we've seen with regards to the growing pattern, or the recurring pattern of coups in West Africa, and indeed what we saw in Burkina Faso and Benin recently, especially with Burkina Faso holding on to Nigerian soldiers who they're yet to return home, even though I think a deal has been brokered. What's going on with that? What are your thoughts? What's ACD's position on such things?
Well, at ACD, we do not support coup d'etat in Africa because we believe in democratic value, we believe in the people's expression. But at the same time, we do not support incompetent leadership. A coup is a result of something. When a coup d'etat happens, it means there has been a system that's prepared such kind of situation to happen. And those systems are basically based on poor governance, extensive foreign interference, when African leaders decide to be completely puppets of Western or Eastern influence. So all these challenges create an environment where a coup can easily happen in the country, but a coup is not a result. It's not a result because who will hold these people accountable, these people who are conducting coup d'etat? No one.
Well, this is the thing. So what do
people under control?
Yeah,
and that's definitely wrong. We need democratic society where people have to be able to express themselves, to elect their leaders, to control their leaders, and make sure their expression, their aspirations are expressed in the government programs as we move forward.
Indeed. Here's the thing. There are many civil society organizations in the continent. So many. I mean, one could argue that we have the highest number of civil society organizations in Africa, yet we don't have stable, people-driven, governance, if you like. What impact? How does the likes of ACD, how can you force that change? Do you work with state governments? Have you been able to work with state governments? Do you have access? And I'll be opening up the line. I know some of you are calling 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. You can send your message to 0809-597-5805. How does ACD, do you get to meet with these leaders? Or is it just about just reaching out to the youth? Because they tell us the leaders come from the society.
Well, at ACD, we believe in a new type of leadership. That's why our key stakeholders are young people all across the continent. So we work with some government across the African continent. We interact with them. We provide policy. We advise them on policy strategies. We advise them on how we see things as we move forward. But the thing is, we need people who are able to implement and see the long-term perspective of what we try to achieve across the African continent. And our key stakeholders are young people, because we've come to a realization that these are the young people are not just the future, but they are the present, because they are shaping the narrative differently and empowering them, allowing them to have access to space, giving them that space that allows them to express their creativity, to express their capacity.
Thank you.
Giving them whatever tool they need so that they can be empowered. That will be a game changer.
Thank you.
That's how we see things as ACD. And we continue to push for that, because we believe in Africa that is completely emancipated. We believe in an Africa that...
Excuse me a second, Gideon. I have a call. Hello.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Titilokwe.
Thank you. Number one, I want to disagree with him that M23 are fighting for nothing. They're actually fighting for something. It might be wrong or right, but I think until we resolve that...
What are they fighting for, in your opinion?
Yeah, they claim they are the Tutsi minority. They are treated as minority in DRC. That is what they are claiming. And they are not being treated well. And apart from that, some of their people, Burundi people, they are also attacking them in Rwanda. I think, number one, I agree with him on the fact that Africa has failed in terms of African nationalism. We have failed in that area. But the question I would like to throw to him now, whether is Donald Trump a devil or an angel? Given the fact that everybody has failed in the past. But Donald Trump just called all of them. Suddenly, M23 is now retrieving.
Okay.
So what kind of madness is that? Is he an angel or a devil?
Okay, thank you. Right. Hold on to that question, Donald Trump, angel or devil? I'll just answer this other call. Hello? Hello? Hello, I can't hear you. Okay, you'll have to call back. I can't hear you, I'm afraid. Gedon, Donald Trump, is he an angel or devil? Hold on, they call him back. Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Let's see again.
Good evening, Emmanuel.
Yeah, it's Emmanuel speaking to you from Ekwe.
Oh,
I want
sorry.
to ask your guest, does the Rwanda president, Paul Kagame, really have a grip on the M23? You know, because sometimes when everybody thinks they are dying down, they seem to resurrect, and keep on fighting again. So even if the Rwanda president or probably Donald Trump say M23 should stop, would they really stop? Thank you.
Okay. So I think that's an interesting question. Does Tshisekedi have any kind of control over the M23? Let me just pick up one more call and then I'll get you to answer that. The three. Hello. Short, sharp and succinct, please. Hello? Okay, I don't know. You'll have to call back. Let me give you a minute to answer those, and if the person calls back, I'll pick up. Gordon, Donald Trump, is he a devil or an angel, given that he's been able to get us to this point? And does Tshisekedi have control over the M23?
Well, if Donald Trump is an angel or devil, what I believe in international relations, countries operate between them based on the basis of interest. I know that American has massive interest in the DRC, knowing that the DRC has a lot of mining deposits in terms of cobalt, lithium ion, coltan, manganese, tungsten, and there are many American companies that are interested in the DRC. So Mr. Trump has interest in the DRC through those American multinational corporations. It's all about collaboration. It's all about business. But is the business willing to benefit the Congolese people? That's the biggest question mark. And I do not give him that responsibility, because the Congolese themselves also have their own responsibility, and the responsibility of them is to protect their sovereignty and to know what they're getting themselves into and how they can secure the Congolese interest as they move forward.
Let me answer this. Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, good evening, yeah.
Okay, good evening. Okay, so you have the line. Yeah, okay. I want to, reacting to, yes, I've heard you quite a while now. So, but I really want to react to this last phrase regarding whether, the interest. Why I'm actually saying this out is that many a times when Trump asks, maybe any leaders or whatever, they always say maybe they have interest. But in specific regarding the Trump, I really don't. I need you
to be very quick. We don't have time. Sorry. What is your question?
My question is that when we say they have interest, is it because interest of what? Is it personal interest or mutual or economic interest?
Well, we've talked about it. Economic interest. It is greed. It is to do with the minerals on the ground.
Yeah, yes. Okay. If it's economic interest, if it's economic interest, we do not surveillance, right? Even that to protect the life and property of people also. What does that mean in Nigeria?
No. Hello. Stop. We are talking about. I need you to be clear, very quick. I don't have time anymore. So, what is your question?
But I'm also not comfortable when people say they have interest. Is what happening in Congo?
Yeah, but what are you saying? Hold on. I'm sorry. We've used up over a minute without a question or something clear. Please say what you want to say.
I'm just hearing my own voice out also. I really don't know when people say have interest. Interest in what? Is something not happening? Can we continue killing? Is natural resources meant for people or people meant for natural resources?
Okay,
people are dying here and there.
Right. I don't know whether you understand that, what happened there, Gideon. If you do, please respond to it. 1 second, let me answer one more call because we only have 4 minutes left. Hello.
Hello, Cecile. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Madam Lotta coming from
30 seconds, please. Yes, go ahead.
Let me ask your guest, with the event you just talked about now in Cotonou, another event that are going on.
Yeah.
You ask your guest that, don't you think that the attitude of African leaders of not keeping to the rules of the game of democracy is what is bringing all these events? Because I don't want to measure the name of this. Is it not what is
it's coups. You can mention coups. Yes.
You ask your guest that with events, even in Nigeria now, you can say our president encouraging a one-party state. Is that a rule of democracy?
But he didn't agree that it was. I honestly must say to you guys, you must listen. I asked him that question, and he actually answered it robustly. My guest, Gideon Beleke, he said, we do not agree with military leadership. At the same time, we don't agree with the kind of democratic leadership that doesn't serve the people. Am I right, Gideon?
That's correct.
Thank you. So let me go back. The guy that you heard, my caller that you heard earlier, who says, well, what's the point? People keep saying interest. Is that what's wrong with them having interest if it's going to save human lives? I'll give you 30 seconds to answer that.
Well, having interest is good, but, those interests have to be negotiated in a way that benefits the people on the ground. And that means it has to be coupled by strong leadership locally that is able to absorb those leadership so that the Congolese people can be beneficiary.
Excellent. Let me answer this. Hello. 30 seconds. I don't have the time. Hello. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is Sule. I'm calling from Ethiopia.
Very quickly.
You know what? I've been listening to the conversation between you and your guest. You know what? When you come to Africa, I don't know what is really. Can Africa decide for themselves, apart from international relationships?
Thank you.
So I don't know the.
Good question.
Actually, of having the African Union. What are they saying in the African Union?
Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much. Good question. Can Africa not stand up by itself, especially given that we have the AU? And what is the point of the AU? I'm being told I have, a minute left. I'll give that over to you.
Well, as we wind up, that's when the critical question is. We need to bring in a lot of reforms on the continent because it's shameful to be having a body like the African Union that is unable to resolve a conflict that has been going on for 30 years. Give me one single conflict that has been resolved on the African continent by the African Union.
Yeah.
None. Because we don't respect the African Union at first. African leaders don't value the African Union.
Which then brings me back, though, to what Mrs. Madame Lucy was saying, is that what then is the point of the democracy in Africa, if we're going to be candid? We don't have to like it, but...
No, democracy is good in itself. Do we apply democracy at the fullest in Africa? That's the question. It's not about democracy. It's our relation to democracy. So our institutions sometimes don't want to apply fully democracy. And we can't have a double standard.
We've got to go.
Democratic or not.
Thank you so much, Gadam Baleke. It's been a wonderful time talking to you. Apologies for starting a little bit late.
No worries.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonder is not in the wrapping paper. It's in the reaction.
Me? You got this for me?
Oh, you remembered me this year.
Mommy, see my own hamper.
This season, Spar Market fills your list with gifts that create those moments. Ready-made and custom hampers, Spar gift cards from just 10,000 naira, and amazing discounts of up to 30% off on groceries, wine and spirits, electronics, perfumes, and more. Visit any Spar Market store nationwide from December 12th to January 1 to enjoy incredible Christmas offers. One store, so much wonder. Terms and conditions apply. Spar Market, there for you.
Start your day and have a good time. Kivo Creamer. Where you need to have the break time. Kivo Creamer. If not tea, Papa Garita. Kivo Creamer. Kivo Creamer.
Uber. On the 12th day of Christmas, my Maggie gave to me 12 spices suya, 11 orishi. 10 wraps of moi, 9 efodiro, 8 plates of nkwabi, 7 pepper soup, 6 season snails, 5 fried fish, 4 cocoa bangus, 3 patty jollof, 2 geese dodo, and fufu with egusi.
A delicious holiday season with Maggie.
Me and Maggie, so good together. Me and Maggie, so good together.
Christmas is here!
And this season, shopping should be easy.
Toys for kids, furniture, everyday items for your home.
Then why go shop to shop?
At Orca, it's all in one place.
One big store, one easy visit, one happy family experience.
Save time, reduce stress, enjoy shopping together.
This Christmas, make it simple.
Visit Orca at Eco Atlantic.
Think home. Think Orca.
Okay now, dependable insurance. After God, you are the next insurance. See as the boys the Allah, all the ladies the Allah. Ensure your car protections from accidents. Unforeseen loss, you can see them. Mistakes are meant to happen. If you don't jam the car, they'll jam yours. Will you beat them? Yes, you will get them arrested. Your plans for that day is affected. You waste your money, you waste energy. With AXA, you can be protected.
Get the protection that pays today. Call 0700 AXA Mansa to get a motor insurance that pays. AXA, know you can.
As a mom and a dentist, I know the importance of strong teeth, beautiful white smile, and fresh breath. They give you the confidence to eat the right foods without worry, speak confidently in public, and making friends is easier when you know you have fresh breath. I give my family confidence with Pepsodent Triple Protection 1, 2, 3. It's 3 toothpaste in 1. To protect their teeth from holes, give them white teeth and fresh breath. The confidence of 3 toothpaste in 1. Pepsodent Triple Protection 1, 2, 3.
Uber. On the 12th day of Christmas, my Maggie gave to me 12 spices suya, 11 orishi. 10 wraps of moi, 9 efodiro, 8 plates of nkwabi, 7 pepper soup, 6 season snails, 5 fried fish, 4 cocoa bangus, 3 patty jollof, 2 geese dodo. a delicious holiday season with Maggie. Me and Maggie, so good together. Me and Maggie, so good together. Maggie, oh.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
Your number one station for talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Above and beyond borders.
This is where it all connects.
It's borderline.
One place.
GVS Owike and Co. are suspended because they've been engaging in anti-party activities.
Did he not campaign for Labour Party in Lagos State?
It's just my pocket.
Withdrawing police details from VVIP people.
Tomorrow, of course, they need people to come and join military. I would allow.
The news, conversation, information, and discussion. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
It's 5 o'clock. The headline news on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Here are the headlines at this time. I am Yvonne Ohaifo. President Bola Tinubu presents 58.18 trillion naira 2026 budget to National Assembly, while Tinubu seeks extension of 2025 budget until March 2026 to end overlapping budgets. Senate President Akpabio calls for unity in 2026 budget session. Tinubu approves full funding for sports in 2026 budget. Houses and land approved for Super Eagles and funds released for Super Falcons, while Nigeria extends tax holidays for 149 companies amid new 2026 tax system. National Security Advisor urges governors to boost security for 2025 festive season. Lassa fever outbreak kills 195 people in 2025 in Nigeria. Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission reopens Ikeja Electric Office after compliance promise, while Unilag VC warns medical education funding is shrinking. Supreme Court dismisses INEC appeal on Social Democratic Party leadership. Cote d'Ivoire tightens northern border security over Mali refugees. And heavy rains disrupt flights, flood roads in the UAE. That's all for now. It's back to Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And I am Yvonne Ohaifo. Thank you for your time.
It's the season to love. It's the season to share. And the season to give. Your number one station for talk. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Wishing you a Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. I am Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Right now, so we've left Africa. We're going to the borders of South America. In fact, the Caribbean, more precisely. We are going to Venezuela. We've had the former advisor to President Maduro on as guest here before. And he gave us, but that was before things escalated to where we are right now. Back then, several people, including some American lawmakers, could still pretend that, it's not about oil, it's not about this, it's about fentanyl, it's about drugs, it's about all these narcotics. Indeed, President Donald Trump could still pretend, not that he's a very good pretender, with all sorts of false rhetoric. Well, this week, we now know. Even more so the week before, we know what Peter exits it. But right now, I have with me somebody that will help us understand more. Because let me tell you, dear Africa diaspora, wherever you're listening to us from, if you think what's going on in Venezuela, what America, President Trump is doing to Venezuela doesn't matter to you, then you must be sorely mistaken, or you're in a different universe, which Elon Musk is here to get to. Right, I have with me Professor Miguel Tinker Salas. He is a professor and an expert on everything we want to know today. Prof, I saw you shaking your head. I know you're not of another universe where Elon Musk hasn't gone to. You're certainly with us on this universe, which Elon Musk is trying to own. How are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very, very well. Let's get right to it. Relations between Venezuela. Well, gosh, you know, we're often forced to use these polite words, relations. Is it really relation? I mean, really, it's conflict. It's a fight. It's a fallout. What's going on? And let's go back to the historical context, which, of course, after President Trump's tweet this week can no longer be hidden. He told us what he wanted. Take us back to that historical context.
Well, this most recent episode between the U.S. and Venezuela started with Trump in his second term arguing that Venezuela was a narco-terrorist state, that it was inundating the U.S. with drugs. In particular, he pointed out fentanyl and cocaine, and that it was inundating the U.S. with immigrants, that it had opened up its jails and insane asylums, his words, not mine, and had emptied them and directed these individuals as if they were zombies to invade the U.S. and take over Colorado, take over states, influence this political decision-making. But the reality was quite the opposite. The very U.S. military intelligence had issued a report saying that Venezuela was not a producer of drugs, that fentanyl did not get made in Venezuela, that fentanyl was made in Mexico with Chinese precursor chemicals, that it was made in the U.S. With those same chemicals, that less than 6 to 7% of the cocaine traffic worldwide went through Venezuela and not manufactured in Venezuela, but transferred through Venezuela, so that Venezuela was not a major drug producer, dealer, exporter of any kind. Yet with that false assumption and that narrative, he proceeded to bomb and destroy and kill close to 100 people now in the Caribbean on launches. There were boats that were launched from Venezuela. Some undoubtedly had contraband. Some undoubtedly might have been taking drugs. Weren't destined for the U.S. They were destined most likely for Trinidad and Tobago or other islands in the Caribbean that were within proximity of Venezuela. Imagine a boat leaving Venezuela on a launch, on a motorboat, reaching the U.S. 1,500 miles away. Impossible. So it was ludicrous on the face of it, yet it became the dominant narrative that Venezuela was now a narco-terrorist state run by a narco-trafficker, and that became the pretext for regime change, for expulsion of the government that was in power in Venezuela. This week, all that narrative changed dramatically because we found out the real reason. In a tweet, Trump said that Venezuela had stolen U.S. soil, had stolen U.S. oil, had stolen U.S. refineries, and he wanted them back. And he wanted full compensation. Now, the question, as we had it for Iraq, became the question in Venezuela. How did U.S. oil get under Venezuelan territory? When he's able to explain that magic trick, maybe we can start believing him. But we saw the issue really clearly established, unable to hide from behind it. His advisor, Stephen Smith, repeated even more vehemently that Venezuela owed the U.S. as if they had been injured by Venezuela. So they presented themselves as the injured party that sought now restitution, when in fact, we now know very clearly that it's been about oil. It's about oil, but it's also about Western Hemisphere dominance. I think things go hand in hand. The U.S. recognizes that over the last 20 years, it has lost tremendous space, political space, economic space in Latin America. Particularly to China. So as a result, it wants to reclaim that. And also last week, we saw the new national security strategy document that was published by the U.S. government, which says exactly that. They want Western Hemisphere dominance. They do not want any other country to have the assets of the Western Hemisphere. And they want to control those assets for themselves.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about that Western dominance. Are they ready to actually accept that they lost that dominance? Indeed, They were the ones who actually pushed the world against Western dominance. Or are we not allowed to talk about that elephant that's in the room?
No, I think that is the elephant in the room, as you point out. I think the reality is that the multipolar world has evolved. U.S. is no longer the dominant force in Latin America. In the last 20 years, we saw the community of Latin American and Caribbean nations without the U.S. We saw the Union of South American Nations. There's been a dramatic change in the last year. The right is now winning election after election. Of the last 5 elections, the right wing has won in Bolivia, in Argentina, in Chile, in Ecuador, in Honduras. So there is a dramatic shift in the region, and the U.S. is hoping to take advantage of that shift. We saw the election of Cast in Chile, someone whose father had been a Nazi during the war, and has supported Pinochet, the dictator, claiming that there were no human rights abuses in Chile at the time. We saw Trump endorse a presidential candidate in Honduras who supposedly won, although the results are still very much in contention. So we see them, as we say in Spanish, fishing in turbulent waters, trying to take advantage of the political shift and to reassert their dominance again in the Western Hemisphere, starting with what they consider to be their backyard, the Caribbean and Northern South America and Central America. So it's more reminiscent of Teddy Roosevelt and big stick diplomacy and gunboat diplomacy than it is the Monroe Doctrine. But the U.S. is trying to assert diplomacy, but it's doing it militarily. If it was powerful economically, it wouldn't need to deploy a fleet. If it was powerful economically, it wouldn't need to deploy Marines. If it was powerful economically, it wouldn't need to deploy its entire military to threaten countries that are smaller, definitely weaker economically and politically, and are not really a threat to the U.S.
Indeed. Let's talk about that. This continued aggression, which is, has killed scores of, innocent until proven guilty, right? So we have to say innocent Venezuelans who have never been proven to be guilty, or drug traffickers. Is America now openly committing mass murder? Or has America now become a pirate that just goes to sea, cut off people's head and take over their boats, or in this case, oil tankers?
By international law, even by the law of the sea, by the UN edicts and declarations, attacking unarmed civilians without any proof is illegal. So the U.S. has violated international law in attacking these small launches that are in the Caribbean. And it's very interesting. They can interdict a tanker, a ship, the skipper, and abscond with the oil, but they can't interdict these small launches, and they have to blow them up and kill them without providing any evidence. So there's a contradiction here we're looking straight at. And I think that's why the majority of the American people, over 70%, have expressed dissatisfaction and opposition to these murders in the high seas and to any intervention in Latin America. The shadow of Iraq and Afghanistan is still there. And people have not forgotten that this president came into office claiming to be against endless wars, against regime change, and is going down that same route right now.
Indeed. Now, we have the Nobel Peace Prize, which was won, or at least awarded, to Machado, who is, if you like, the primary opposition to President Maduro. What's the relevance of that? What's the impact on that, on everything we're seeing? Indeed, we saw Maduro try to play down the U.S. support, but is she being totally honest with the world?
I think for many people, it was a surprise that she would have won, although there was an active campaign. Let's be clear, there was an active campaign to try to make her the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. But this is a person who has, in the past, supported insurrection. In 2014, she supported something called La Salida, the exit, which was an effort to create protests in the streets of Venezuela, take over cities, take over neighborhoods, seal them off, create autonomous communities, then clash with the military, burnt buildings, killed individuals. It left people dead on both sides. So this is not what you would expect from someone who is a peace advocate. This is not someone who believed in nonviolence. Again, in 2017, 2018, she supported actively insurrection. She has been supportive of a U.S. intervention in her own country. She supported Netanyahu in the genocide in Gaza and the Palestinians. So again, it's not the model one would expect of someone that has been a recipient of a peace prize and believed in nonviolence. But nonetheless, she is the leading opposition voice, but not the only opposition. We forget that there is other opposition people in Venezuela who can be critical of Maduro but are opposed to intervention. There's a left opposition in Venezuela to Maduro. There's an important left opposition. There's a working class opposition to Maduro, but they all have one thing in common. They oppose U.S. intervention. Whenever the U.S. becomes involved in the internal politics of any country, it skews the results, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Haiti, whether it's Guatemala, whether it's Nicaragua. In this case, it's Venezuela.
So, is it possibly a case of Machado or Mercado trying to position herself as the one to be installed in the event of a regime or successful regime change? And will she be able to actually, if she were to be installed, rule the country, for want of a word, given these other oppositions that you talk about?
Well, but the challenge is that constitutionally, she's not elected to any position. The individual who ran last time was González Urrieta. And he would, if there was a regime change imposed by the U.S., Constitution, in fact, matter of fact, he would be the titular head. Now, there is always talk that he would appoint her as the vice president, then he would resign. But that would be opposed by, I think, a significant portion of the population. And the question is, everyone on the opposition wants regime change, but they don't talk about what happens the next day. What happens is, will it require a U.S. military presence permanently to install her as the president? Will there be a U.S. military there to back her, to support her? Because in most scenarios that have been played out, the next day is the most critical. Will the military fracture and then take control of various parts of the country, particularly the oil-producing territories? Will the guerrillas from the ELN in Colombia assert their control over the border between Colombia and Venezuela? Will organized crime now assert its territorial rights or its territorial efforts at gaining territory? You could have a fractured country, which would benefit the U.S. because they could exploit the oil, but it would not benefit Venezuela. And the larger question here is, what is in the best interest of Venezuelans who need to recover economically, politically, culturally, and create a new consensus of how to go forward?
Indeed. And it is always, and it must always be about the people. But more recently, we had a former Venezuelan military intelligence chief who said that Maduro's government operated, quote unquote, narco-terrorist organizations and alleged that they have, they're connected to groups like FARC and Hezbollah. Is that credible? Is that true? Is that possible?
Every military officer that has requested asylum in the U.S. Has been arrested by the U.S. has fabricated an account, a narrative of how they were a centerpiece of a drug trafficking operation. But the very information from the very U.S. intelligence itself argues to the contrary. The only evidence of a cartel de los soles, or a cartel of the sun, is 1993, when the CIA operated a backdoor operation in Venezuela to traffic Colombian cocaine into the U.S. through Venezuela, and had the participation of a handful of generals that participated in that operation. It was like Fast and Furious. They wanted to track where the cocaine went, how it was delivered, how it was trafficked. But that was the effort on the part of the CIA, not on the part of the Venezuelan government. There is no evidence, and again, the U.S. military intelligence reports underscore this. There is no evidence of a government action or a government-led narco state. There may be individual officers who are corrupt. That always could be the case, that turn a blind eye when drugs are being trafficked. But according to the U.S.'s own intelligence, it's less than 7% of the coke in the world trade.
Isn't that interesting? Less than 7%. So let's talk about the man himself, Maduro. He seems to be standing tall. You can tell us if that's real or if he's tall with wobbly legs or not. But he seems to be standing tall. He seems to be standing in, ready to face the United States. However, let's talk internally. The economy in Venezuela is not great. We know that there's high unemployment, indeed, amongst the youth. Tell us, what has Maduro done wrong? If he was Maduro right now, what would he be thinking? I should have done better.
Well, I think that the efforts that were initiated by Hugo Chavez and Maduro inherited in 2013, 2014 after his death and his election to the presidency, he faced hyperinflation. He faced U.S. sanctions. He faced an emboldened opposition that now saw an opportunity to unseat him because his mentor, Hugo Chavez, had passed away, had a reinvigorated opposition, and they launched protests in 2014. So we have to understand the context. It's not as if you had a smooth transition of power and you had with the imposition of sanctions, particularly by Obama, who declared Venezuela to be a clear and present danger to the U.S., something that we scratched our heads trying to figure out how it was a clear and present danger, except that politically he wanted cover from the right, so he declared them a clear and present danger, opening the door to increasing sanctions that eventually were done by also Obama, by Trump, by Biden, and now in second phase by Trump again. So those sanctions began to squeeze the economy. You had between 7 and 8 million people begin to migrate out of Venezuela, one of the largest movement of people in the contemporary era. And those immigrants went to Colombia, went to the U.S., went to South America, went to Brazil, to Chile, Peru, Bolivia, went elsewhere. And Maduro, to tackle inflation, pursued a traditional approach, cutting back on credit, freezing wages, and those hurt the working class. He compensate for it by providing food bonuses and package bonuses, but that in the essence was pauperizing the working class and pauperizing the social movements and pauperizing many in the society. So to strike that balance, there was support for a Bolivarian bourgeoisie. There was the endorsement of a Bolivarian bourgeoisie that once that Boliburguesia, as it's called, was able to establish that you could have a new economy. One of the things that did happen was Venezuela began to produce what it consumed, something that had not happened previously. So there were some sectors of the economy that improved. If you went to Venezuela 2 years ago, the issue was not that there was shortages of food. The issue was people didn't have the money with which to purchase them. So that was the contradiction. And Maduro did not tackle that directly. Previously, there had been efforts to protect the Bolivar. So money was spent on social programs that were now cut back. So those hurt the population. Subsidies there for food were also cut back. So he tried to squeeze the economy in a very draconian fashion to put inflation under control. But the reality is that it wound up hurting the population and was a factor in the migration.
Indeed. Here's the thing, though. It sounds, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like whatever it is that President Maduro may have done wrong, or the steps he may have taken wrong, he followed, at least, inherited from Chavez. Is America afraid of a socialist society? Is that their greatest fear? Because it appears to be.
Well, I think they're afraid of independent sovereign countries, whether they're nationalist or socialist.
Right.
And if you look at the historical record, for example, Arbenz in Guatemala was not a socialist. He was a nationalist at best. There may have been socialists in his government, but he was a nationalist at best, and he was still overthrown. So you have Allende, who was a socialist in Chile, but who was very mild socialist implemented in terms of programs. He was overthrown by the CIA. Efforts to overthrow Chavez in 2002, when he had not declared himself to be a socialist. That didn't happen until 2006 and 7. Even before that, there was efforts to, as the U.S. said, inoculate Latin America from the Chavez contagion, so that the nationalism became a contagion, as if people needed excuses for which to rebel. And so in that context, yes, I think the U.S. wants, in this document that came out last week, the National Security Strategy, it's very clear they want Western Hemisphere dominance. And they talk about governments that are ruled moderately applied, supportive of the U.S. So again, what they're looking for in many countries is access to resources and governments who will cooperate with that. And they found them. They found them in Ecuador. They found them in Argentina. They'll find them in Chile. They'll find them in Honduras. These countries.
Indeed, they found them in Africa.
Yes. They'll find them elsewhere. The U.S. cannot operate without local allies. They are critical for any one of these economic, political changes to occur. You need to have local allies. And what the U.S. sells, and I always argue with my colleagues, don't look for the CIA. Look for them effort to sell the American way of life. Because in selling you the American way of life, they're selling you a narrative of a consumer-based culture that will acquire modicum of development and modicum of growth, and that they will be able to expand, and you'll have access to goods, and you'll be able to have your newest iPhone, your newest Samsung phone, you'll have your newest iPad. That's what they're selling you. They're selling you a notion of an American way of life with all the values that incorporates and includes, and with all the policies that are assumed to go along with that.
Prof, you're talking to us, before I even move on to my next question, I'm glad you mentioned, the American way of life. You're talking to us from the United States right now. So, in fact, thank you. It must be really early. I think you're in LA, are you?
Yes, it's at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, thank you so much for giving up your time. Your morning, we're in the evening in Nigeria. The day slowly coming to an end. But yeah, talk to us about, that American way of life that, America wants to constantly impose on the world. And we now see a right-wingism that is growing, sort of in parallel with that, as well as the tech bros that appears to be dividing America at the very least, at least to the rest of us outside of America. What kind of impact is that having on foreign policy, and how is that foreign policy affecting what is going on internally within American politics itself?
Well, you have a growing society in the U.S. that is where the chasm between the wealthy and the ordinary person is growing wider and wider and wider, with a handful of elite tech bros, as you call them, where elites who have billions in yachts and residences all over the world now want to exploit. Part of that technology requires rare earths. Part of that technology requires minerals. Part of that. So we're seeing the redivision of the world in many ways. Why did Trump negotiate with China? Because he wants Chinese access to rare earths. Why is the U.S. interested in Venezuela? Because they want access to rare earth. Why are they interested in Bolivia, who just elected a right-wing government after almost 20 years of socialism?
Yeah.
Because they have rare earths. So again, we're seeing a redivision of the world's resources, much like we saw in the 19th century, where the countries are being exploited, developed, and they're being categorized by the resources they have and by what they provide to the imperial powers. So in that sense, I think we're seeing. But again, I don't think they have to go very far to sell the American way of life. Most people want some commodities. Most people want some asset, but they don't realize the consequences that come with it in many cases. And what does that mean for the ecology? What does that mean for the world? What does that mean for our society, for the polarization? Because this political process benefits from the polarization. They want to polarize. How did Trump come to power? Blaming immigrants for all the crisis in the U.S. How did Trump come to power? By saying he was going to make America great again. For whom? For what sectors? For the elites. And we're seeing that right now with the big, beautiful bill that was passed this year. Some call it the big, horrible bill, in which all the tax breaks go to the wealthiest sector of society, right? We saw a desperate Trump speaking 2 days ago, saying that the economy is doing fantastic. Why did he do that on a December evening in a rapid fire sequence? He did it because he knows his pollings are going down, because the contradictions are being exposed, because less than almost 70% of people are opposed to his policies, where he's spending most of his time abroad, not in the U.S. He's going to Saudi Arabia. He's going to the Middle East. He's traveling here, there, elsewhere, while the economy in the U.S. becomes more complicated. Products become more expensive. Well, I'll tell you myself, I went to the grocery store yesterday. I bought a pound of beef. It used to be $4.99 a pound. Today it's $8.99 a pound. That's exploitation.
Indeed. And a distraction. From what's going on domestically. No, so here's the other thing. The other accusation against Maduro, at least Venezuela, is Russia and Iran. But Donald Trump doesn't claim to have gone after them because of a relationship with Russia. He claims to have gone after them because of their relationship with Iran. What is the relationship between Venezuela and Iran? Is there any?
Venezuela and Iran do not have a long history of relations. Under Chavez, we began to see an effort at South-South relations to transfer, to remake the nature of relationships so that Washington wasn't the centerpiece of the relationship, and anti-communism and anti-Iran did not have to be the cornerstone of the foreign policy. There was amicable relations between Venezuela and Iran because they were oil producers. It had nothing to do with Hezbollah or Hamas, as is being projected. It wasn't support for oppressive conditions here or there. It was an effort at constructing a support within the global South. And remaking relationships between Venezuela and Africa. Under Chavez, he recognized that when he attempted to be elected to the Security Council of Venezuela, that he had not built support among African countries. So Venezuela in 2005 began opening up embassies throughout the African countries and create relationships that had not existed previously. So again, I put the case of Iran in that context, in part of a process of South-South relationships, not one in terms of some conspiracy theory against the U.S. or against Western powers.
Indeed. I'm glad you mentioned Africa. Let's now pick your brain a little bit further, since you are speaking to us in Africa. What kind of relationship is it? Is there economic relationship or culture, or just a culture? Because, of course, we know Latin America, Europe, West Africa in particular, and the cultural relationship is very, very strong. So, but is there a strong enough economic relationship, or should there be?
I think there should be. I think there should be. I think the countries of South-South have to start developing the economic relationships that don't center on Europe and the U.S. and Washington. And that has begun slowly, and that's what worries the U.S. That decentering process is what worries the U.S. But Venezuela, under Chavez, Venezuela had a very interesting conception of itself and race. It always argued that miscegenation had produced café con leche, coffee and milk. But the question I kept raising was, the real issue was how much milk was in that coffee. That's really what made the distinction of that process, because what people were concerned about was there was a white dominant aesthetic. And even though you may have been of African heritage or African descent or indigenous, you were always judged against that white aesthetic. And you can see it in the Miss Universe contest with Venezuelans.
Absolutely.
The women were all European dominant aesthetics. They all looked European. They all looked with a tinge of coffee and milk. So you had that dominant, and with Chavez, you began to see someone talk about an African heritage in a very concerted fashion, not in a demagogue fashion during election time, but as part of that process. I remember very clearly watching an interview that was being done of Chavez when he had these Sunday afternoon hour-long programs, and a young man in the back, a young Afro-Venezuelan said, please refer to me as Afro-Venezuelan. I am not, so-and-so. And Chavez, it hit him that he himself had to address that issue, had to address that question, that Venezuela was part Afro-Venezuelan. It was part Afro-Indigenous Venezuelan, and that the identity had to be something that had to be addressed. But again, so that we saw a challenge to that national discourse, to that narrative, to that dominant narrative of how Venezuela envisioned itself. I think it's still a challenge. It's still there. It's not in the Constitution. It did not make it into the 1999 2000 Constitution. So the question of Afro-Venezuelan rights is still a debt that Venezuela has with the Afro-Venezuelan population.
Professor Sal, I'm loving this conversation. I'm loving it. It's funny you mentioned Miss World, if I may just say. When I was little, this was back in the UK, and I remember my mother would make us watch Miss World because it was such a big thing back then. We all didn't know any better. We always supported Miss Venezuela. They were so incredibly beautiful. In fact, that was my first relationship. As a child, I must have been, 10, 11 or so, to, Venezuela. And I always remembered she would say, we're supporting Miss Venezuela. I never asked why. But of course, here we are today. One forgets all these things. And this is the thing, is that, like you rightly said, the countries of the South need to come together and hold and actually support each other. But what are CARICOM doing? CARICOM is closer to Venezuela. What are they doing to support Venezuela, at least to protect them? Because at some point, there is a dictum that says there's nothing to fear but fear itself. At some point, you've got to break free of that fear. What's America going to do? Kill all the population in the Caribbean?
Well, you raised two things that are. Let me go back to Miss Venezuela for a second, because it's interesting that before Chavez, as a graduate student, I was told, don't study Venezuela because no one cares about it. What does it do? What does it have? It's a country where we don't have racial problems, we don't have cultural problems, we don't have a left. There's not an insurgency anymore. So therefore, it's not worthy of study. And if it's studied at all, it had three things that people looked at. It had a lot of oil. It had talented baseball players, and it won Miss Venezuela 6 times.
Yes,
6 times. That was it. That was what people knew about Venezuela.
Yes.
You scratched the surface, and you got down to those three things, right? Oil, baseball players, and Miss Universe or Miss World. And they even developed a Mr. Venezuela in Venezuela to go along with Miss Universe.
Oh, dear.
So that was a shallow way of identifying and understanding a country. And unfortunately, that lack of understanding and lack of knowledge continues to this day. So that the only way that they interpret Venezuela is Chavez and Maduro, or an opposition. They don't recognize that the majority of people are being left out of that discourse, that the majority of people are being left out of that construction, and that there are people who represent all the political persuasions in Venezuela, who don't support Maduro but are against intervention, who don't support the right, support Maduro. So you have a very complex country, and what I would like the most to happen is people understand some of that level of complexity. In terms of CARICOM, Trinidad is letting U.S. use its territory as military bases. It is receiving U.S. ships. It is allowing U.S. advisors to be there, so that it has not played a role of solidarity. Guyana and Venezuela have been involved in a border dispute for quite some time, particularly with ExxonMobil, who was in Venezuela initially and then now has been developing fields in Guyana itself. So again, we don't see, unfortunately, we don't see the good relationships that were there. Even though there was Petrocaribe, Caribbean Petroleum, where Venezuela was selling oil to Caribbean nations on long-term credit rates, so that they wouldn't have the onerous payments like Jamaica confronted during the middle of the 1970s and 80s. The reality is that it's divided. There is not a expression of solidarity. Although I think that if we scratch the surface and go beyond what the politicians are saying, the majority of the population in the Caribbean would be opposed to U.S. intervention because they know the consequences of that process. So I think it's important to separate the discourse at the level of the politicians who see a benefit in closer relations with the U.S. and what the population considers. And I think we're seeing that in Trinidad and Tobago to a certain extent.
Let's talk about this blockade. I mean, the last time one heard of a complete blockade was on Gaza, right? Certainly, it's a word that one doesn't. Of all sanctioned Venezuelan oil tankers, what does that mean? What is he doing? I mean, it's
squeezed.
Yeah,
he understands that the oil is the cornerstone of the Venezuelan economy. He understands that without oil, Venezuela does not have the ability to have raise foreign exchange with which it can purchase food, with which it can purchase medicine, with which it can purchase consumer goods, with which it can purchase machinery to activate the oil industry. So he recognizes through his advisors. And again, I want to insist that Venezuela may be in the crosshairs right now, but it's not just about Venezuela. It is about Western Hemisphere dominance. It is about unseating Venezuela. It's about unseating Cuba. It's about unseating Nicaragua. It's then about putting pressure on Mexico and on Brazil, which are the two powerhouses in Latin America. And we know that from Stephen Miller, and we know that from Mark Exberg, the former Secretary of Defense in the first Trump administration, when Trump actually began to consider how to send missiles into Mexico to blow up supposed drug laboratories and expected that Mexico wouldn't know where those missiles came from. I mean, that's how ludicrous we've gotten to. But Stephen Miller is now on record of having said that they initially were going to attack Mexico and attack so-called drug laboratories in Mexico, but then that would upend the economy. Mexico is a much larger country. But by establishing an embargo on Venezuela, what he's trying to do is squeeze the economy. But who pays the price for that? It's not going to be Maduro.
No.
Maduro will not have any problems. He will eat his meals, 3 meals a day. The reality is the Venezuelan people will suffer. There will be shortages. We'll have another recession. Hyperinflation will continue. Inflation has increased dramatically in the last 3 months precisely because of these sanctions. So the products are getting higher and higher in price there. And the reality is that the people who will pay, as we say in Spanish, los platos rotos, the broken plates will be paid for by the poor, by those consumers, by those workers, by those in the middle sectors who are unable to purchase goods with their limited salaries.
And this is what is so concerning when you hear somebody like Machado who claims, she's for the freedom of Venezuela from Maduro, but she's not thinking, or at least hasn't said anything about how this blockade is going to affect the people.
She supports the blockade. She has supported the blockade. She has supported a U.S. military intervention. She has supported Israel's destruction of Gaza. She has said that her first policy would be, again, privatizing the oil companies, inviting the American oil companies back in, returning to a panacea. And here's the problem I always have when they talk about we want to return to the period before Chavez. Well, what was going on in the period before Chavez? 80% poverty, inflation, economic crisis, increased polarization. That's what produced Chavez. That's exactly what produced Chavez. There is no mythical Venezuela that existed previously that you can return to. That's the idea of the Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and broke. That model is broken. What is the model you're proposing now? What are you suggesting for dealing with 31 million people? How do you reconcile a nation that has been so polarized and divided? How do you open up spaces for new employment? How do you deal with the continued dependence? Venezuela has to grapple with the fact that it has a dependence on oil. The former minister of oil, Juan Pablo Pérez Alfonso, in the 1960s, one of the founders of OPEC, said that Venezuela faces oil is the excrement of the devil. It is Venezuela, the excrement of the devil that has distorted its economy, distorted social relations, distorted political relations, and placed Venezuela in a contradictory position. And that's something the country needs to grapple with long term.
And the same applies in Nigeria. Just change Venezuela for Nigeria, and we know exactly what he was talking about.
You could do that, but I can't speak for it.
Oh, Prof, you're an expert on the global south to an extent. So really, it's the same thing. We all suffer from the same devil that is called oil. And where, if not for the oil, more recently, we saw what happened with Ghana. Ghana only recently found oil, and the Ghanaian economy, the Ghanaian society totally changed. But hey, that's a conversation
we had the idea that the U.S. created the Venezuelan oil industry, which Trump has been heralding the last few days, is ludicrous. Venezuelans knew they had oil. The reality was that there was no internal combustion engine, so there was no need for oil. But indigenous people called oil mene. The oil erupted out of the soil naturally. The very first refinery was in 1879 in Venezuela, in the state of Táchira, run by Venezuelans. But there was, again, no infrastructure. So the most they could do was light lanterns and caulk boats and use it to prevent the rain from leaking into the roofs. So that we had knowledge of it. It's just that there wasn't an international market for it till oil became, and you had the internal combustion engine and you had oil required for it.
Indeed. I'm going to ask two questions because we're fast, if I can get my teeth back in, fast running out of time. And I know there will be those who want to call on 0207 277 0993. Or the other female line is 0201 465 7190, or send your message or questions to 0809 597 5805. Those of you who are trying to call on WhatsApp, we can't answer WhatsApp because my guest is joining us remotely. I've got two questions that I want to pull together before I call them my co-hosts before they take over. Donald Trump called Maduro regime a foreign terrorist organization. How dangerous is that? And also, part of the, should we say, murmurs and hints that we hear is that, look, a lot of what's going on with regards to the Trump administration and the aggression is being pushed from the back by somebody like Marco Rubio, who is Cuban. How true is that? And what's Marco Rubio's problem? If I may use the street slang for that. What's his problem?
I think the vehemence in the Trump administration is directly attributed to the role of Marco Rubio as a State Department head. I think there's no way around it. I think Marco Rubio, some people have not called it not the Monroe Doctrine, but the Miami Doctrine. It's coming straight out of the exile community, of the Cuban exile community, the Venezuelan exile community, the Nicaraguan exile community. Miami is the home, the residence for a large part of the Latin American exile community that brings with it all its rancor, its hatred, its sense of loss of privilege. And I think that Marco Rubio is a key voice in this process. And he's the link between the State Department, Washington, Trump, and the exile community. So I think in that sense, he is a critical factor, a critical role in promoting the Trump policy for a regime change in Latin America and throughout the region. The other part of your question, can you repeat that again?
Is about Donald Trump calling Maduro's administration or regime foreign terrorist organization.
I think it's a way to delegitimate whatever happens in Venezuela. I'm not a supporter of Maduro. I am very critical of Maduro and his policies, particularly how they pauperize the working class, particularly how they put the burden of the crisis on the backs, the growing authoritarianism, and the lack of a broader vision for the country. But clearly what's being done is an attempt to demonize Maduro as a narco-terrorist, because, again, Americans understand those words. First, we had terrorism and the Middle East and the terrorism and the war on terror. First, the war anti-communism, the war on communism, the war on terror, now the war on narco-terror. So we're fusing these words, these concepts that American population can understand, and creating a narrative of whenever we want to pursue regime change, we utilize this terminology, and we use it to demonize the opponent the U.S. has focused on.
Indeed, because that's, like you said, what the Americans... Okay, you can call now. I have just over 5 minutes or so with Prof, so make it short, sharp, and succinct, and I will pick up your call, and you're already calling. I told you, Prof. Hello.
Good evening, Cecilia. Maduka from Festac.
Good evening.
Yeah, Maduka from Festac.
Go ahead.
If Venezuela and some other countries over there are dealing with a superpower that doesn't recognize or doesn't follow or obey international laws, which they themselves made, doesn't even look up to United Nations, and they are dealing with such superpower, do they stand any chance?
Okay, thank you.
You understand what I mean?
I do. I will ask Prof.
Yeah,
thank you. Stay listening. Yeah. Thanks. It's an excellent question. What chance does Venezuela have with against the United States that continuously, persistently, consistently has ignored international law? Prof, hold on to that question. I'm going to pick up another call. Hello.
Hello, Cecilia.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Susan calling from the
Very quickly, go ahead.
Going especially in Venezuela, what is exactly America want in that Venezuela?
What does America want?
Or interfere in their government activities. And even though Biden has administration...
It's very bad where you are.
That's my take.
Okay. What does America want from Venezuela? I think you've addressed it, but perhaps it missed it. But I think the first question, yes,
access to oil. It wants to reestablish its control over the Western Hemisphere. And what's really tragic is the lack of an international voice here from the UN, from the European countries, from other countries to recognize that what's happening to Venezuela can be done to any other country in the region.
What option, does Venezuela have against the United States that actually ignores or has disregard, complete and utter disregard for international law?
Well, I think the option is to keep making the argument in the UN, in international bodies, in maybe in the world.
But what if America now decides, because they've obviously surrounded Venezuela and they've got all, this military machinery surrounding them? What if it strike? I mean, will it strike? Will it strike Venezuela?
I believe they might do quote unquote targeted strikes at targets, but again, those targets will have collateral damage.
Yes.
I mean, people will die because the military bases are not in some isolated region; they're next to urban centers.
Wow.
So people will die, and that's the consequence. And but for the U.S., there's also what the old Colin Powell statement: "If you break it, you own it." Is the U.S. prepared for a long-term occupation to ensure stability in Venezuela, to gain access to that oil? Are they really willing to engage in another long-term war conflict that looks like Iraq or looks like Afghanistan? The real question, as I've been saying earlier, is what happens the next day? You can invade tomorrow. You can't invade with 15,000 troops. You're going to need 75,000 to 100,000. And that has consequences for the U.S. for domestic policy. Because again, this president was elected with a policy that's against regime change and against long-term commitments abroad. So we find ourselves in an interesting conundrum here. The other issue with the Trump policy is that it seems to divide the world into fears of influence, so that they want to control the Western Hemisphere. But that means Russia can control Ukraine then. That means China can control Taiwan. Is that the world you want to live in? Is that what you want to promote? A return to Cold War spheres of influence? But these are all the things that are in play in Venezuela. It's not just about Venezuela. It's about Western Hemisphere dominance, and it's about his control over resources in that region.
We're not hearing much. Actually, I've got, 3.5 minutes left. I'll come to your calls, I promise. But let me just ask Prof this, and then I'll pick up your call. We're not hearing much from the Venezuelan community in the United States. If you could add that, just tell us what they're saying, and also I'll pick up this call. Hello.
Hello, this is okay.
Very quickly.
The former Honduras president was jailed in America last year for cocaine crime. Yes, Donald Trump releasing and is fighting Venezuela because of narco-terrorism. What can you say about that? Is that
Well, he spoke about that, but okay, I'll let him speak again. Right, there you go.
There's no evidence that Venezuela is a narco-terrorist state. It does not produce fentanyl. It does not produce any chemical drugs. Maybe up to 5 to 7% of the cocaine is trafficked through Venezuela by illicit groups, but not by the state, not by the government. There is no evidence. Even the national security documents from the U.S. indicate that there is no such scheme. In terms of the population in Venezuela and in the U.S., it's very divided. It's divided generationally. It's divided politically. One poll that we know happened in Dade County, Miami, where a large number live. 48% were opposed to U.S. intervention in Latin America and opposed to U.S. intervention in Venezuela. So I think that their numbers are increasingly also concerned because those are their relatives in Venezuela that are in the crosshairs.
Yeah. They're telling me I have to go. Prof, I could keep you here forever because it's an absolute pleasure. And like you said, honestly, one of the reasons we do this show is to actually bring the global south closer and for all of us to learn about what's going on in our independent countries so that we know that ultimately we have the same problems and the same interference. Thank you so very, very much, Professor Miguel Tinker Salas, joining us from the United States of Donald Trump.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share the knowledge of Venezuela.
We will be calling you back, Prof. I promise you we'll be calling you back. Have a fabulous weekend. Bye-bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Right, that is the end of Borderlines. Live Borderlines till January, the next Friday, not the second, the one after that, which date goes out of my head. Let me just check. It's January 2026. What is it? The first January.
Update.
Yeah. So that is it. We've got to go. Adverts are coming. Have a wonderful Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Cecile Gay and the whole team wishes you a brilliant Christmas. All the best. Speak to you in January. Bye-bye.
Hey ladies, do you know Nigerian women are celebrated for their radiant glowing skin? That's right. But with a hot sun, protecting our skin can be a challenge. Good news! Perfectio by Vitabiotics UK gives you targeted support for great looking skin, hair and nails. Packed with biomarine collagen, botanical extracts, and other micronutrients which contribute to skin hydration and radiance while reducing other skin imperfections. Available in pharmacies near you. Perfectil, beauty from within.
Uber, on the 12th day of Christmas, my Maggie gave to me 12 spices suya, 11 orishi, 10 wraps of moi moi, 9 eforiro, 8 plates of nkwabi, 7 pepper soup, 6 seasoned snails, 5 fried fish, 4 cocoa bangles, 3 patty jollof, 2 geese dodo, and fufu with egusi, a delicious holiday season with Maggie. Me and Maggie, so good together. Me and Maggie, so good together.
When life tries to hold me down.
Whether you're chilling with your friends, in town with your clique, watching a movie with your bestie, turning up at parties for the jollof, or just chilling at home by yourself, reach for a refreshing bottle of Razzle. Razzle your world and express yourself with the new and exciting flavors of Razzle. Cola, orange, and lemon. Razzle your world.
Introducing So Clean Pink Detergent, Nigeria's first pink detergent innovation, specially formulated to make your clothes look and smell amazing. It's with 2 times perfume, so every wash releases a burst of long-lasting fragrance. It's soft on clothes with color guard that leaves your colored clothes vibrant and bright. So Clean Pink delivers great cleaning while treating your fabrics to a touch of luxury. Feel the pink with So Clean, the #1 pink detergent.
Every day when my children return from school, I don't recognize them. Hello, do I know you?
It's us, mommy.
But these dirty, sweaty uniforms and socks were clean in the morning. Everything don't transform. I understand though. School is hectic. It takes energy to come home this transformed. So I make sure they have some nutritious Milo at breakfast.
Your kids need nourishing energy. Give them Milo at breakfast. It has nutrients that support energy release to help them get the most out of their day. Milo, energy to go further.
Milo. On the 12th day of Christmas, my Maggie gave to me 12 spices suya, 11 orishi, 10 wraps of moi moi, 9 eforiro, 8 plates of unkwabi, 7 pepper soup, 6 season snails, 5 fried fish, 4 cocoa bangus, 3 patty jollof, 2 geese dodo, and fufu with egusi, oh. A delicious holiday season with Maggie. Me and Maggie, so good together. Me and Maggie, so good together. Maggie, oh.
Introducing So Clean Pink Detergent, Nigeria's first pink detergent innovation, specially formulated to make your clothes look and smell amazing. It's with 2 times perfume, so every wash releases a burst of long-lasting fragrance. It's soft on clothes with color guard that leaves your colored clothes vibrant and bright. So Clean Pink delivers great cleaning while treating your fabrics to a touch of luxury. Feel the pink with So Clean, the #1 pink detergent.
This is where it all connects, all in one place.
GPS OWK and Co. are suspended because they've been engaging in anti-party activities.
Did he not campaign for Labour Party in Lagos State?
It's just my pocket.
Withdrawing police details from VVIP people.
Tomorrow I will call so they need people to come and join military. I would allow.
The news, conversation, information, and discussion. 99.3 Nigeria Info. It's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.